where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
On the 27th of September 2019, Friday Jobber, a magazine program, and we'll have a magazine, there's no doubt about that particular political commentary from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Stumbling off here, we'll get into the whistleblower's report and a little bit of commentary on it as we will dive into it. I'll read portions of the greater portions of it. It is a collection of statements that this person received from various individuals that had first-hand knowledge of the recording or of the conversation between DJ Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And then also the machinations involved in that particular situation with various other governmental officials, period. And that we'll see and how it goes. And we have something from the Daily Beast here, a summary of it. We'll get into it here also. I think we'll start with the Daily Beast. We incidentally also have our friends from the University of Virginia at Charlottesville. That is the Crystal Ball, Larry Sabato's shop. The University of Virginia, of course, is located in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we always honor, have a hire here. We won't have the scores of this week, but we will look at the standings from Major League Baseball and the remarkable journey, I believe, of the Milwaukee Brewers. But firstly, let's go to the Daily Beast column here, and we'll have reporting from the Washington Post, the national newspaper, and the New York Times on this same story, and we'll actually read the story itself. Well, wait a minute, this is Kamala Harris. Let me deviate away and jump back to Larry Sabato and company. The 2020 primaries and caucuses cancellations through the lens of recent history. This is by Josh Pullen. Is a guest columnist here. Republicans in several states will cancel primaries and caucus in 2020 as DJ Trump seeks re-election. I saw today that old DJ Trump is on the campaign trail in October in the Midwest state of Minnesota. I believe that's October 10th. He'll be in Minneapolis. He's attempting to capture that state. He came up about 40,000 or so votes short the last time. Is 2016 the same as 2020? We'll wait and see on that one. However, the cancellation of primary caucus is not unprecedented, as a review of the two most recent nominating cycles involving G.W. Bush in 2004 and Barack Obama in 2012. Much is made of late of recent wave of cancellation of Republican primaries and caucuses ahead of the 2020 season. Three challengers have been thrown their hats in the ring to oppose DJ Trump for the Republican nomination. There has been at least a few quiet declarations about the fairness or necessity of such maneuvers on the state level. Fairness and necessity aside, however, these sorts of moves are not uncommon throughout the post-reform era of the presidential nominating process. State parties routinely hold off on conducting both primaries and caucuses for various reasons, as a mean of not protecting the incumbent president, but instead of saving valuable resources that the state government could use for more pressing projects. The state parties it could use elsewhere in a party building. But the questions that have lingered amidst the state level maneuvering on the Republican side is whether this 2020 cycle is any different than other cycles, coming on the heels of DJ Trump's victory in 2016 was a surprise victory to many, but not us at the Ouija board. Anyway, the Republican Party did what incumbent parties occupying the White House tend to do. They largely stick within the overreaching national party delegate selection rules that got the president nominated in the first place. The only change that took place within the RNC rules was to eliminate a debate commission within the RNC charged with sanctioning presidential primary debates. And that rule was made and finalized in 2017-2018 in the context of a constraint of a constant deadbeat of just what vulnerabilities the president was to be challenged from within his own party. In other words, despite the potential for threat, the National Party made no significant moves within the rules to insulate the president from these challengers. This may be viewed in retrospect as a missed opportunity. Typical 4-year presidential cycle is often not only the only opportunity for the party to exercise some control of the process, instead of working through the National Party rules to end the proportional allocation requirements for early calendar contests. For example, the National Party and the president's re-election campaign can work with state parties to change the rules. This is exactly what Trump's campaign set out to do in 2019. Changes have been made to increase delegate qualification thresholds in Michigan, to add a winner-take-all trigger in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and to end direct election of delegates. I guess this is in West Virginia. Obviously, primary rules changes have a clear and more direct impact on the former, but the parties tend to make changes, no doubt about that. Much of what guides the two major parties in the U.S. on these questions is based upon the general philosophies of both. The Democratic National Committee has increasingly taken a more top-down approach to rules and changes, defining, for example, when states can hold delegate selected events, the method of allocation, and the threshold to qualify for delegates. The National Republican Party, on the other hand, tends to be more libertarian, hands-off, in other words, there. The philosophical differences have impact on how both parties tackle LaRue changes in the cycle when they're defending the incumbent in the White House in the wake of 2018. Democrats still re-examine their rules based upon the Democratic Change Commission charted in the 2008 convention in Denver. There was an effort to reduce the size of superdelegates that came out of the commission, and a new bonus incentivizing states from regional and sub-regional clusters of contests on primary calendar, sort of like the March primary calendar, alternative to the GOP process, empowering state parties. This is not to say that the National Party didn't make any changes. To the extent then the changes were made, the rules in incumbent cycles are not, they intend to come from the state parties. Cancellations, and this is an overall of some of the cancellation access laws in 2014 involved what Connecticut, Florida, Mississippi, South Dakota, New York, and Puerto Rico. That was ballot access laws, budgetary legislation, Arizona, opt-out primaries, Delaware, and South Carolina, opt-out caucuses, Arkansas, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Utah, Washington, Wyoming, non-compliance, D.C., redistricting in North Carolina, total of 19. And that was 2004. 2008 was a little bit different there. Budgetary things in Idaho, South Carolina, Utah, and Washington. Non-compliance with Michigan and Arizona. I remember, no, that was in 2008. Michigan didn't have a primary. Anyway, redistricting in Texas. 2020 we'll have Arizona, South Carolina, Virginia. They're opting out of primaries. And Arkansas, Kansas, and Nevada will not have their caucuses. Nevada used to have, I believe, both a primary and a caucus. Anyway, so 6 of those out there have changed what they are doing. The budgetary thing doesn't really matter. I'll wrap this up because this is more or less John Putnam is the author of Front Loading HQ, a widely cited website that tracks the presidential nomination rules for both parties. He's taught political science at North Carolina and since receiving his PhD from the University of Georgia. One thing that stands out in comparison of both parties is the number of opt-outs during this century. It's much more pervasive amongst Republicans, especially in caucus states. In 2004, when G.W. Bush was up for renomination, 8 state parties held caucuses, but no presidential preference vote tethered to the process. Delegates were selected in that caucus convention process, but those delegates were either bound to only Bush or remained unbound but committed to the president. Another avenue for Republican parties in this vein is Rule 16D. Well, anyway, rules of Republican Party state committees can select, allocate, and bind delegates to national convention. In fact, what Nevada Republicans have done for 2020 is not clearly an opt-out on the Democratic side on the DMC rules. We'll leave it at that on that situation there. Now we'll come to Kamala Harris. This is actually the Daily Beast. Taunts a tough image as race slips in key states. She's been having problems, as we reported earlier on one of our broadcasts here at WBRN Radio on the Boston Red Network. Funders were questioning where she's going. The mention of Attorney General Barr as a point of contact for Ukrainians should they start investigating Joe Biden. His son Hunter was one of the shocking detailed memo in July call between Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky, revealed to the public on Wednesday, but Senator Harris' presidential campaign. It was an opportunity. Shortly after the document was released, Harris' staff was circulating a video of her tough question of Barr, like anyone cared. Senator Harris absolutely nailed A.G. Barr back in May, and now he's in big trouble. That's what the Daily Cause said. Ira Sams, he's the National Press Secretary for Kamala Harris, gave the story in several similar texts throughout the day and retweeted them. Now have 5 million views. That's Lily Adams, the Harris's communication director, wrote, linking it to the C-SPAN video which showed the full exchange. But outside Washington presidential campaign trail, Harris is receiving little attention. The senator's campaign had a fantastic first week. The crowds, money, momentum, all aligned following her launch, in January. That was in downtown Oakland. I remember we covered it when Harris landed a powerful blow against Biden, only helped crystallize her as a rising star. But she turned out to be a shooting star. A series of national and early state polls in recent days provide a grim glimpse into the California Democrat current standings, plummeting in some cases to low single digits and leaving Democrats to question what plausible path would look like. Interviews with 10 Democratic operatives and activists with deep ties in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina reveal a series of missteps in Harris's campaign, not showing up enough in some places and others failing to knock Biden and Elizabeth Warren off track. Warren is the clearest example of a candidate who is prosecuting a worldview. Biden is prosecuting the case, I'm the guy who can win, and Kamala is what? That's what some strategists said. Several interviews said they still weren't quite sure who or what Harris was all about. And Warren is the clearest example of a candidate who is on the worldview. We already talked about that. In South Carolina, that's the first primary with a significant population of the followers of O.J. Simpson. In other words, African Americans. Democrats say the Harris campaign has been hamstrung by voters' long-standing affection for Joe Biden, who has strong support with critical voting blocs and a budding interest in Warren, the progressive from the Commonwealth. While things have changed in months before things could change or can change, cast Democrats cautioned that a weak performance from Harris in Iowa or in New Hampshire, where she struggled to break out of single digits. Well, she has problems in Iowa. There is Bernie, there is Liz Warren there, and there is Joe Biden. So that's 3 there, so 4 and 5 things. Amy Klobuchar, who is from next door, could cause her some big headaches in Iowa, because Amy Klobuchar has to get one of those 4, I guess is now 5 seats out of there. The little mayor from South Bend, he's still around, but he's sort of stymied too. We've got to put Iowa first. That's what Adams said, as she plans to visit the state each week in October. Well, that's not really going to help her. She has an additional 60 full-time organizers, opening up 10 new offices. That may or may not help, but she has to have more standing there than she has. In talking about the influential state, Democrats often point to Barack Obama, and in 2007 had been there 3 times, and he made his show at Lincoln Jackson dinner, the Jackson dinner there, and of course the rest was history. Another example, look at 2004, in Massachusetts said Brother John Kerry was on life support, and after firing a part of his staff and coming and campaigning out in Iowa, he won the caucus with 37% of the vote and went on to secure the nomination. The most optimistic outcome for Harris would be carving together a similar route to success. While strategists and activists agree, it's hardly too late for the California Senate to pull off a surprise victory. It indeed would be a surprise victory. Joanne Harity, chair of Cicero Gordon County Democrats, said that while voters remain undecided in their final picks a few months ahead, February 3rd caucuses, it's not too early to start locking down support. Joe Trippi, he's been around a long time. He managed Howard Dean in 2004, but Howard Dean predicted and yelling he'd go on and on. That was about the end of him right there. He stressed the unpredictable nature of the race, but criticized what he sees as an initial blunder. What can you do? You can't do what they did. He said early there, they had a huge error in strategy in both early contests. It's hard to mention the name of Kamala Harris, who have fought, hearing a follow-up point about Warren, who in recent days, of course, has surged. Warren had 27% in Monmouth University poll released in New Hampshire. Harris dropped 3%, down 3 percentage points from her 6%. And, well, if the strategy in New Hampshire is not important to their campaign, that's okay. But you get mad, don't get mad when people point it out. Judy Ridden, she's a Democratic actress, former longtime advisor to Gene Sheehan in New Hampshire, wonders about the initial strategy for the First Nation primary. I love to know the internal thinking. Harris has been questioned about whether she actually focused on New Hampshire primary, but consistently said she's committed to the state. It's a lie. Anyway, exciting to be back for the convention and other events. 2 days after attending the Democratic State Convention, Dwight Davis, the vice president of the party's African American caucus, endorsed Harris. That doesn't mean anything. I almost blundered there. Not in New Hampshire, where Harris's campaign has spent significant resources. Building a ground game becomes more difficult to win if she can't pull off a strong showing in the first two contests. In South Carolina, well, she has fraternities and that sort of thing in South Carolina, but big problem. In the YouGov, CBS News has now aligned themselves YouGov. In September, she had 7 percentage points in South Carolina, and most recently the Charleston NAACP Annual Freedom Fund banquet. Democrats and states say Biden's long-standing. Yeah, well. And you also have to remember, in South Carolina, that is a conservative party there, and the African Americans there tend to be much more conservative than in other states. That also creates a problem for Senator Harris. For Kamala, what happens in these states is that she didn't take a lane out and stay focused in that lane. One Democratic strategist in the state on affiliate with any campaign, I think she underestimated the strength in the black community of Joe Biden, and she underestimated the strength of the progressive community for Warren. Well, that be it. A lot of underestimating there, a lot of second guessing on poor old Kamala Harris, and we just see where that goes. I think we'll save the Cognac poll for later. We'll come out with that. This is on September the 25th. I'll just read the line. Warren continues to climb while Biden slips. Quantified University's national poll finds the primaries neck and neck. That's what Cognac found. She got 27% of the vote. Joe Biden, that's a statistical tie there. Bernie Sanders had 16%. And old Buttigieg at 7%. Kamala Harris down at 3%. Buttigieg is killing in August. Biden received 32. Warren had 19. And actually, Bernie had 15. He's climbed 1. And Kamala Harris has said where Buttigieg may have taken away some of her report there after trailing Biden by double digits since March. The race for Democratic nomination. Let's see here. Warren catches Biden. That's what now said Dr. Tim Malloy. Now we have a race with two candidates at the top. Warren is getting the most excitement amongst the Democratic candidates, which doesn't say a lot. Biden and Sanders also excite a majority of voters who say 50 to 25% they would be excited about Biden, and 55 to 38 about Bernie. Half, 50% of Democratic-leaning voters want to see a Democratic nominee that would result in major changes, but also it would be more difficult to pass into law. This basically has been the same thing going here. Biden's favorable ratings is split 45-45. That's not as good. His rating is 70-19 amongst Democrats. So that's. Let me just gotta make an adjustment here. That's why we're having a little bit of a problem here. All right, now we got it. Let's see, 45-45. Both of these numbers have gotten worse for the vice president since the beginning of his campaign. And let's see here. Warren, though less well-known than Biden, gets similar mixed favorable ratings amongst voters, 39 favorable, 41 unfavorable amongst Democrats and Democratic leanings. Her favorable rating is slightly better than Biden at 74-10, so forth and so on. And where's DJ Trump? And old DJ Trump in this, and basically about the same. His favorable ratings are negative 38, 55, nearly matching his rating in the 2016 election. But that in itself can have some problems. Hillary Clinton's favorable rating was 41, 55 in September 2015. If he ends up facing either Biden or Warren, he will have an opponent that is well linked at this stage of the game. Well, that's Joe Biden and where Joe Biden is or where Joe Biden is not. Let's get to this. Let's do the rural Texas Prairie View University. I thought we did it. Maybe we didn't. Anyway, first came poll taxes and white-only primaries that target African Americans in southeast Texas community. In recent days, this is by incidentally Amy Gardner on the 24th of September in the Washington Post. In recent decades, students at historic African American University Prairie View A&M University were required to complete a residency question to prove their eligibility to vote. They saw their power at the ballot box diluted when the campus was carved into separate districts. Some were arrested when they tried to cast ballots accused of improper voting. Then came the midterms in 2018 when county leaders scheduled fewer early voting hours on the campus than in the whiter communities nearby. Here we go again. That is Jayla Allen, a third-generation Prairie View student. Although angry at the time, she and other students sued, demanded to fight what they view as racial injustice, and what they view it is racial injustice. Okay, debate over Waller County. This is Freddie with a century's worth of mistreatment of African Americans. The debate over Waller County's electoral processes have emerged as a battle of more than just voting hours. The intense reaction at Prairie View, the deep feeling of marginalization and anger over long standing efforts to keep African Americans from the polls. The intense reaction in Prairie View echoes discussions across the country about racial inequality, proper new examinations. You look at the history and it inspires you. You draw to the action, as Alan said, a 20-year-old political science major. I hate the fact that it has been consistent since 1970, and here we are in 2019 fighting the same fight. What feels like a prejudice to A&M students is viewed differently by Carbert Dehue III, the local judge, who helped determine the voting hours last fall. Duhow is European, and there's no question what discrimination in field past election process there. But last year he said early voting schedules was driven solely by limited resources. Need to serve a sprawling county and got enough money. He's aiming to provide as much early voting in Prairie View as at the main county location. I understand how this looks. I understand and appreciate the perception for someone who knows the history of Waller County. No doubt about that. Waller County is a racist county, period. County in transition over the once a center of slavery and cotton production. Waller County's population, 51,000, is now a mixture of rural prairie and Houston suburb. Proceeding west out of the sprawling cities, the strip malls, subdivisions, and towering interchanges quickly fade in miles after flat land of pastures and cows. What is now Prairie View A&M University was founded in 1876 to help freed slaves enter the workforce, according to the administrator there, Frank Johnson, 68, who lives in Prairie View and has served as the mayor of the county commission. Now Prairie View A&M is dominated by a campus of roughly 9,000 students. A flat expansion of low brick buildings, wide driveways, known for its engineering and nursing programs. The university has long had to make do with less money than Texas A&M University. That is in College Station. That's a flagship, of the A&M University's agriculture mechanical schools, where Bush has his library. The gap narrowed following protests and lobbying. Today, Prairie View's campus boasts a sparkling new stadium, student center, and housing. Progress on the racial relations side is evolving. There's Sandra Bland. Remember Sandra Bland, who was murdered in the Waller County Jail after she was arrested in a contentious traffic stop. Was on her way to a new job at her alma mater, Prairie View A&M. Bland's death was ruled a suicide, so forth and so on. Long before that case, Waller County was known for one of the highest lynching rates in Texas, starting in 1923, whites only primary, excluding African Americans from voting. After the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965, thanks to Lyndon Johnson, another Texan, and the ratification 6 years later, the 26th Amendment, lowering the age to 18, Prairie View faced barriers. In the 1970s, a local election administrator demanded students, but not other residents of Waller County, fill out a residential questionnaire. The student sued problem, the landmark ruling in 1979 from the Supreme Court affirming the right to vote at school. In 1992, 14 Prairie View students were charged with improperly voting, including one accusation of voting twice, though one of the ballots belonged to his father. We know that Waller County has not been totally fair with these kids, Jackson said. There's been 143 years now, he said. The disparity is so blunt. The fight over early voting. Students lost Prairie View home to 508,000 of the county's 33,000 registered voters had fewer than half the days of early voting in the three neighboring cities. Of those, the hours are split between a campus location and off-campus a community center. Small town there. Three other cities, Hampstead, Waller, and Brookshire, have larger populations or proportions of Europeans than Prairie View. The census estimate to be 80% African American. Overall, Waller County is 70% European. The students appealed for more hours at the board. The commission voted no. Then lawyers from the NAACP Education Fund reached out to Allen and several other students, and they wanted to be plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the county. 2 days after they filed a suit was filed, the county agreed a special meeting to expand the voting hours and opened a Sunday polling place. For Allen, it wasn't enough. Prairie View still has fewer early voting hours. They want us to fall down and break. That's what she told Dr. Al Sharpton on NBC. Frustrated county officials have hoped the extended hours would lead to a resolution. Turnout in Prairie View measures the trend across the country. Last year, it was dramatically higher than 4 years earlier. The city's in the city, two precincts, 2,647 votes were cast, 3 times as many in 2014. Leafa Alden, an attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, is helping litigate the case. She said some voters had to work hard to surmount barriers to access. Voting is still not equal in the United States, she said, and some voters have to jump over the finish line. Others have to run the finish line unencumbered. Out of the dark ages, Duan said that with limited funds, the goal was to improve. We already went through that. The county, for instance, offers fewer early voting hours in the comparative city of Katy, which is majority European. That also said that long voting lines in Prairie View in 2016 had prompted him to double the number of machines there. I wonder, did they work? He disputed the off-campus polling place in the city of Prairie View, a community center about a half-mile walk from the campus, was inconvenient. He's crazy. The 49-year-old who grew up in an adjacent Fort Bend County moved to Waller in 2005 to set up a private law practice. Elected in 2014 to lead the board. He ran for office to get Waller County out of the dark ages, but he's still evidently. His first act was to reestablish early voting on the Prairie View campus in time for the 2016 election. Dehan anyway acknowledged that some in the county still view Prairie View as a political threat. No doubt about that. Tom Zorn, what was he akin to the football coach? A retired horse trainer, sips coffee in Hampstead's McDonald's, said voters should have to live in the county a certain amount of time. Anyway. And Zorn went on to say he's not prejudiced. Anyway, so much for the article out of Prairie View. And now let me go to the actual complaint here. Hopefully we'll get through it. We'll stop some of it here. This is to Richard Burr. This is Chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence in the Senate. And to Adam Schiff of the House. Chairman, I'm reporting an urgent concern in accordance with the procedures outlined in 50 U.S.C. 3033K5A. The letter is unclassified when separated from the attachment. In the course of my official duties, I received information from multiple U.S. government officials that the President of the United States is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign nation in the 2020 election. This interference includes, among other things, pressuring foreign government to investigate one of the presidential's main domestic rivals. The President's personal attorney, Rudolph Giuliani, is a central figure in this effort, and the Attorney General Barr appears to be involved. Over the past 4 months, more than a half dozen U.S. officials have informed me of various facts related to this effort. The information provided herein was relayed to me in the course of official interagency business. It's routine for U.S. officials with responsibility for particular regions or functional portfolios to share such information with one another in order to inform policy making and analysis. I'm not a direct witness to most of the events described. However, I found my colleagues' accounts of these events to be credible because in almost all cases multiple officials recounted facts pertaining that were consistent with one another. In addition, a variety of information consistent with these private accounts have been reported publicly. I'm deeply concerned that the actions described below constitute a serious flagrant problem, abuse, and violation of law. Our executive order and does not include differences of opinion concerning public policy. Consistent with the definition of urgent concern, I am therefore fulfilling my duty to report the information through the proper channels. It has been said that he did report them. To the best of my knowledge, the entity of this statement is unclassified when separated from the classified enclosure. I have endeavored to apply the classified standards outlined in Executive Order 13526. If a classification mechanism is applied retroactively, I believe it is incumbent upon the classifying authority to explain why such a marking was applied. And that happened in the Hillary Clinton situation. On the 25th of July, the President's phone call early in that morning, the President spoke by telephone with the President of Ukraine, Zelensky. I do not know what side initiated the call. This was a first publicized, acknowledged call between the two leaders since a brief cordial call after Zelensky won the presidency. That was on the 21st of April. Multiple White House officials with the direct knowledge of the call informed me that after the initial exchange of pleasantries, the President used the remainder of the call to advance his personal interest. Namely, he sought to pressure the Ukrainian leader to take action to help in the 2020 re-election bid. According to officials who have direct knowledge of the call, he pressured Zelensky, inter alia, to initiate a continued investigation of activities of former Vice President Joseph Biden and his son Hunter, assist in promptly uncovering the allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. election, originated in Ukraine, with specific requests that the Ukrainian leader locate and turn over servers used by the Democratic National Committee and examine the U.S. cybersecurity firm. And this has been brought up with CloudStrike, which initially reported that Russian hackers had penetrated the DNC's network in 2016. Speak with two people the president named, and that he named Giuliani and Barr. The president also praised the Ukrainian prosecutor general Yushchenko and suggested that Zelensky might want to keep him in his position. He was, of course, fired. Yushchenko made a series of public allegations, many of which he later walked back, about the Biden family's activity in the Ukraine. Ukrainian officials purportedly involved in 2016 U.S. election and the activities in the U.S. embassy in, I think this is Kiev. I guess misspelled. The White House official who told me this information, officials, plural, were deeply disturbed by what transpired in the phone call. They told me they were already an ongoing discussion with White House lawyers about how to treat the call because of the likelihood in an official retelling of that they had witnessed the president abuse his office for personal gain. The Ukrainian side was the first to publicly acknowledge the call. On the evening of the 25th, a readout was posted on the website of the Ukrainian president that contained the following lines translated from Russian. Donald Trump expressed his conviction that the new Ukrainian government would be able to quickly improve Ukraine's image and complete the investigation of corrupt cases that held back cooperation between Ukraine and the U.S. Aside from the above-mentioned cases purportedly dealing with the Biden family and the 2000 election, I was told by White House officials that no other cases were discussed. Based on my understanding, there were approximately a dozen White House officials who listened to the call, a mixture of policy officials, duty officers in the White House Situation Room, which is customary. The officials I spoke with told me that the participants in the call had not been restricted in advance, because everyone expected it would be a routine call with a foreign leader. I did not know whether anyone was physically present with the president during the call. In addition, the White House personnel I spoke was told by a State Department official that whatever was listening in on the call, Yurik, and I'm not trying to pronounce his name. I was not the only non-White House official to receive a readout of the call. Based on my understanding, multiple State Department intelligence officials were also briefed on the content of the call as outlined above. Efforts to restrict access. Now, this is very important here. The following day, following the call, I learned from multiple U.S. officials that senior White House officials had intervened to lock down all records of the call, especially the official word-for-word transcript of the call that was produced as is customary by the White House Situation Room. The actions underscored to me that the White House officials understood the gravity of what transpired. White House officials told me they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are routinely stored for coordination, finalization, and distribution to cabinet level officials. Instead, the transcript was loaded into a separate electronic system, and that electronic system, incidentally, has been around for various administrations, otherwise used to store and handle classified information of a special sensitive nature. One White House official described this act as an abuse of the electronic system because the call did not constitute anything remotely sensitive for national security purposes. I do not know whether such measures were taken to restrict access to other records of the call, such as contemporaneous handwritten notes taken by those who listened in. On the 26th, a day after the call, Special Representative Ukrainian negotiator Kurt Volker visited Kiev and met with Zelensky and a variety of Ukrainian political figures. The Ambassador Volker was accompanied in this meeting by the U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sunderland. Based upon multiple readouts of the meeting recounted to me by various U.S. officials, Ambassador Volker and Sunderland reportedly provided advice to Ukrainian leadership on how to navigate the demands that the president had made of Mr. Zelensky. I learned from multiple U.S. officials that on or about the 2nd of August, Giuliani reportedly traveled to Madrid to meet with one of Zelensky's advisors, Termak. The official has characterized this meeting, as which was not reported public at the time, as a direct follow-up to the president's call with Zelensky about the case they discussed. Multiple U.S. officials told me that Giuliani reportedly privately reached out to a variety of other Zelensky advisors, including the Chief of Staff, Bodan, and acting chair of the Security Service of the Ukraine, that is Ivan Bakanov. I do not know whether these officials met or spoke with Giuliani, but I was told separately by multiple officials that Yermak and Bakanov intended to travel to Washington mid-August. About August the 9th, the president told reporters, I think President Zelensky is going to make a deal with Putin and they will be invited to the White House. We look forward to seeing him. He's already been invited to the White House and he wants to come. I think he will. He's a very reasonable guy. He wants to see peace in Ukraine. I think he will be coming very soon, actually. Circumstances leading up to the 25th of July call. Beginning in late March, a series of articles appeared in an online publication called The Hill. In these, several Ukrainian officials, most notably the General Counsel Valery Lysenikov, made a series of allegations against other Ukrainian officials, current and former U.S. officials. Lysenikov and his colleagues alleged, and then they passed evidence of that Ukrainian officials, namely the head of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine, Artur Sagyov, and the members of the parliament, Lechekov, had interfered in the 2016 presidential election, allegedly collaborating with the DNC and the U.S. Embassy in Kiev. But the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, specifically the ambassador there, Marie Yuchenkov, who had criticized Lysenikov organization for its poor record on fighting corruption, and had allegedly obstructed Ukrainian law enforcement agencies, etc., had blocked Ukrainian prosecutors from traveling to the U.S. expressly to prevent them from delivering their evidence. That the former Vice President Biden had pressured the former President Petro Poroshenko, and to fire the then Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin, in order to quash a purported criminal probe into Bersheimer Holdings, this Ukrainian energy company, who the board was Hunter Biden was on the board. Several public comments. Mr. Lysenikov also stated that he wished to communicate directly with the Attorney General Barr. These allegations, like Lysenikov, came on the eve of the first round of the Ukrainian presidential election. That was on the 31st of March. By that time, Lysenikov's political patron, President Poroshenko, was trailing Zelensky in the polls and likely to be defeated. Zelensky made it known his desire to replace Lysenikov as a prosecutor general, basically because he was corrupt. And there's a long situation here. It's marked on classified. As publicly reported, Giuliani had met on 2 occasions with Lysenikov in New York. Had spoken in New York in late January, in Warsaw in mid-February. In addition, it was publicly reported that Giuliani had spoken in late 2018 to the former prosecutor Sokin in a Skype call. Skype's used by many of us. And arranged by 2 associates of Giuliani on the 25th, an interview on Fox News. The president called Lysenikov's claim big, incredible, and stated that the Attorney General would want to see this. On the 29th of April, U.S. officials learned with direct knowledge of the situation that Ambassador Yovanovitch had suddenly been recalled to Washington by senior State Department officials for consultations and would likely be removed from her position. Around the same time, I learned from U.S. officials that an associate of Giuliani were trying to make contacts with Zelensky's team. On the 6th of May, they announced that Ambassador Yovanovitch had been ending her assignment in Kiev as planned. She was removed. Giuliani subsequently stated in an interview with a Ukrainian journalist published on the 14th that the Ambassador Yovanovitch was removed because she was part of an effort against the president. Boy, I tell you, he's got all these people out here to get him. The New York Times reported that Giuliani planned to travel to Ukraine to press the Ukrainian government to pursue that investigation that would help the president in his re-election bid in 2020. Multiple public statements leading up to and in the wake of the publication of the article, Giuliani confirmed that he was focused on encouraging the Ukrainian authorities to pursue an investigation to allege Ukrainian reference in the 2016 election and alleged wrongdoing by the Biden family. Here it is. On the noon of the 10th, the president stated in an interview with Politico that he planned to speak to Giuliani about the trip. Here we go. And I will pinch this. Starting in mid-May, I heard from multiple U.S. officials that they were deeply concerned by what they viewed as Giuliani's circumvention of the national security decision-making process to engage Ukrainian officials and relay messages back and forth between Kiev and the president. The State Department, including Ambassador Voka and Sunderland, had spoken with Giuliani in attempts to contain the damage to national security, and that Voka and Sunderland during this period met with members of the new Ukrainian administration, in addition to discussing policy matters sought to help Ukrainian leaders understand and respond to differing messages they were receiving from U.S. official channels on one hand and Giuliani on the other. During the time frame, multiple U.S. officials told me that Ukrainian leadership was led to believe that the meetings and calls between the President Zelensky would depend on whether Zelensky showed willingness to play ball. Now this is damaging here. The general understanding of state of affairs was conveyed to me by U.S. officials from late May to early July. Shortly after Zelensky's inauguration, it was publicly reported that Giuliani met with 2 other Ukrainian officials, Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor Nazar Telehinko, and both Telehinko are allies of this character, Lysenikov. That's according to The Hill. On the 12th of June, old Giuliani tweeted, new president of Ukraine, still silent investigation of Ukrainian interference in 2016 and alleged Biden bribery of Prashinikov. We're investigating both to, if you want to purge how Ukraine was abused by Hillary Clinton and Clinton people. Oh boy. Now this is where we have one additional information related to section. According to multiple White House officials, I spoke with a transcript of the president's call was placed in a computer system managed directly by the National Security Council, NSC, directed for intelligence programs. This is a standalone computer system. There is a redaction here. According to information I received, the White House officials, as other officials, voiced concern internally that this was an abuse of the system. It was not consistent responsibility directed for intelligence programs. According to the White House officials I spoke with, this is not the first time under this administration that presidential transcripts was placed in a code word level system solely for purpose of protecting political sensitivity. And here's we're getting into Blackout City here. I would like to expand two issues mentioned in section 4 that might have connection with the overall effort to pressure Ukraine, as I did not know definitively whether the below mentioned decisions are connected to a broader effort I described. I chose to include them in the classified index. They indeed represent genuine policy deliberations and decision formation to advance U.S. foreign policy and national security. One might be, well, I learned and then again from U.S. officials that on about the 14th, the president instructed Vice President Pence to cancel his travel plan to Ukraine to attend Zelensky's inauguration. Secretary of State Rick Perry, otherwise known as Texas Perry, led the delegation. Instead, these officers, it was not made clear to them that the president did not want to meet with Zelensky until after he saw how Zelensky chose to act in office. I do not know whether this action was connected with the broader understanding described in the unclassified letter that the meeting or call between the president and Zelensky, and whether Zelensky wanted to play ball on the issue that had been publicly aired by the Synagogue. Anyway, the Office of Management Budget officials informed departments and agencies that the president earlier this month had issued instructions to suspend all U.S. security assistance to Ukraine. That was on the 18th of July. Neither the OBMB or the NSC staff knew why the instruction had been issued during the interagency meetings on the 23rd and 26th of July. Again, stated expeditiously that the instruction to suspend assistance came directly from DJ Trump himself. And we have ended this. Anyway, I shall append this on the show, and I believe we have everything here with the exception. We have some articles in the Des Moines Register. Won't go into those here. We may bring up some of the Washington Post articles. This is a gamut for Trump. Giuliani engaged, the Washington Post headline, engaged in a parade of U.S. of Ukrainian prosecutors. Here is what the situation is. And this is this character, Yuri Lysennikov. It was in Kiev, and Kiev is spelled K-Y-E-V or K-Y-I-E-V. Depends actually if the spelling is proper in the document there. So it wasn't really a misspelling, it was actually what it was. We'll look at some of these and we'll bounce back. This is something DJ Trump said. Almost a spy, a transcript of Trump's remarks at a private UN event about the whistleblower. This strikes McCarthyism. Delivered a wide-ranging remarks at U.S. mission to the UN on Thursday morning, in which he dismissed the complaint against him from an intelligence community whistleblower and suggested that the person's action are akin to being a spy or committing treason. Oh boy. Closed-door event was intended for staff and families of U.S. delegations to honor their work. Below is a transcript of a 9-minute video of Trump's remarks obtained by the U.S. The video begins with the ambassador Kelly Craft on the stage. We don't have it. Maybe we'll get it for tomorrow night here. And basically, audience yelled, "They are animals, some of the worst." Wait a minute. What in the world is all this? We're really nice gentlemen in the president of the Ukraine yesterday, he said, and he was good. He said he was good. He said he was pressuring you. You know these animals in the press. They are animals. They are the worst human beings you ever met. And the audience yelled, "Fake news." They are scum. Many of them are scum. You have some good reporters, but many, I am honest with you. And one reason we battle looked at Kraft, you find out, but then you probably like you better than they like me, but I have to get this right. They are totally, they are dishonest people. They are crazy. They can't figure it out. What they said bad about this conversation, then it turns out they have senators, Democratic senators who went out there and strong-armed the guy. You'd better damn well do this, or you are not going to get any money from Congress. And then you have Sleepy Joe, who is dumb as a rock. Oh boy. The guy was dumb on his best day. He's not having his best day right now. He's dumb as a rock. So you have Sleepy Joe. He goes up and his kid got a lot of problems. He got thrown out of the Navy for problems. Oh boy. I might look, I'm not going to it. It's a problem. That's a problem. So we won't get into why that happened. But he got thrown out of the Navy. Now this kid goes to Ukraine and walks around with millions of dollars. He became a consultant for $50,000 a month, and he doesn't know anything compared to anyone in this room. Oh. He walks around with $50,000. You say in the old days $50K, not bad. Would anyone else in this room like to represent Ukraine for $50K? And he goes on here. The best one was China they came up with. So he went to China and he was the head of Blackstone, which is a big deal. I'm not sure what all this is about. Oh, this is, I guess, what he talked to the audience about. Well, maybe he's going on here. He was the head of Blackstone, which is a big deal. Steve Schwartzman said. I said, Steve, is this possible? No. Why? Who got that? Said Biden's son. Oh, well, then, maybe I should get involved, very political. Said Steve, what happened when you come off a VP's plane? It's called Air Force Two. Your father with you. You walk into a room in China and they give you a fund of $1.5 billion. You make hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions off of that. I guess this is a Chinese deal. When they talk to you, they don't do it. They don't know if I'm an innocent person in the world. But this is more presidential. I'm the most presidential, except the possibility of Abe Lincoln. Oh, this is terrible. Remember, we used to do that during the campaign. We used to say, I'd speak with crowds. The crowds would be crazy. I'd go crazy. They would go crazy. Boy. Now he's going back to how he came down the escalator. I'm not sure about all this going on here. This is just... Oh, now he's talking about what he did for Don Bishop. Evidently, he's talking to this audience at the UN, and then he gets off into what he did for Don Bishop in that race, how he won the race. Some whistleblower came out and said nothing, and said a couple of people told me he had a conversation with Ukraine, and we have We're at war. These people are sick. They are sick. Nobody called it out like I do. I don't understand. People are afraid to call it out. They are afraid to say that the press is crooked. We have a crooked press. Lupin presser. We have a dishonest press. So they are devastated. They'll always find something. I'm sure there'll be something they'll find in this report that will suit their lie. But basically, that people never saw the report, never saw the call. What in the world is all this about? Anyway, it's not I rambling here. It's DJ Trump rambling along about Biden and China and $2 million for, this is Biden's son that got thrown out of the Navy. We don't know why he got thrown out of the Navy. I'll have to check on that one. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow on the week that was. We have to save some of it for another day here, and we'll have hopefully some more polling. We'll hear from Charlie Cook, and we'll also have Numbers Man this week. And incidentally, the U.S. economy grew at 2%. We feel that was lucky. 2% growth there. You're not going to have 3.5-4% growth. You can forget about that. 2.25, that's as good as you're going to do these days where capitalism is. We'll talk more about that on the week that was, known as the Numbers Man show. This is Boston Red on the 27th of September 2019 in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. Have a good weekend, everyone. Good day. We are in autumn now. And, well, we did have a little story here. We don't have it now. Maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. About the Milwaukee Brewers coming from last place out. Now they're in a bid, I should say, to go to the playoffs. Our poor Cubs, unfortunately, got eliminated. The Red Sox are eliminated. Tears in the beer at taverns on Boston Street, no doubt about that. Around the center of the world, Wrigley Field, there on North Clark Street in Chicago. They have 3 more games. They'll be down in St. Louis later today, Saturday and Sunday. And we'll tune in for those games and report to you.